fruits, and that looks like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. I think that was all 9 of them. I didn't write that in my notes. But we take those and we get those, receive those, because they were a gift from the Spirit. And we bear those. One of the ways we bear them is by spending time with Him and abiding in Him. And as I've been just focusing on that this week and practicing the stillness, practicing the not being hurried, practicing the sitting with Him, reading, spending time, one of the tendencies that I have, and maybe it's just me, hopefully not, maybe you too, but one of the tendencies that happens with me is that my mind starts racing. And there's a flurry of activity as I'm spending time and being still, and that looks like, it just looks like a flurry, like all the things that I could do, all the people I need to see, all of the things that need to get done, all the conversations to have, the contacts to make, what life is going to look like tomorrow, the scheduling and the writing down and the planning. And when that happens, I have realized that my actions are paralyzed, that all of a sudden now I have all these ideas and all these things to do and all these places to be, although right now the places to be are not necessarily physical, but just a lot of things to do that I've flurried up in my mind, and then that starts to look like the paralyzation, because then it's like, well, where do I start? What's first on my list? Who needs what most? How do I proceed? All those things, and obviously those are conversations with me, myself, and I, not out and crazy, but just that recognition that as I'm slowing and stilling myself, that my mind is more busy and then my actions don't follow it. So the recognition that then I'm not really living in that freedom that Jesus gave me, right? Because Jesus came to free us. We talked about that last week, because all of a sudden I'm making the plans, I'm worrying about the order, I am calling the so-called shots that aren't happening yet. I'm getting tired and I'm getting worn out and I'm getting exhausted, and nothing's happened yet. And then I remember that I am spending time with Him to listen, to learn, and to lean in, not to take over. So that's just a little bit of insight of where I went from our devo last week and the spending time and the pressing in. And so as I was reading scripture this week, and as I was reminded that the spending time with Him is listening and learning, leaning in, not to take over for me, myself, and I was drawn to Matthew 11:28 through 30, reminded of that. Matthew 11:28 through 30 says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." I love those verses, and as I just tried to remind myself of what they mean and what those words are, a yoke is a harness that is put on 2 animals, like 2 ox, so that they can pull together, because 2 are stronger than 1. Typically, one side is bigger so that the stronger animal, the more experienced one, is able to take the lead and to guide and train the younger animal. In these verses, Jesus' yoke, where it says, verse 29, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." Jesus' yoke in these verses is His life and teachings. Not the law, not the rules, because that's what we were freed from, the law. Last week also, in talking about freedom, we mentioned that We were freed from shame, guilt, fear, worry, sin, trying hard, comparisons, doing things on my own. Apparently, as I've already said, I needed to be reminded again, and maybe you do too. Verse 28 again. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. All that flurry in my mind gets me exhausted, tired, and those words, weary and burdened, are exactly it. Burdened for the things that I know that I want to do, burdened for those things that I know that Jesus is asking me to do, and yet then I'm paralyzed and weary and can't figure out the how and the why and the when and the where. But verse 28 again, come to me all. All are invited by Jesus to take his yoke, to learn from him, to lean in and to let him guide. There we will find the rest for our souls. That was healing for me today. All are invited by Jesus. There we will find rest for our souls. We were set free from bondage, set free from returning to slavery ever again, set free to love and to serve, to be harnessed right next to him as he gently and humbly leads. His yoke is easy and his burden is light. We also ended last week by reading Galatians 5, chapter 1. And it just, again, was healing for me, and so I'm going to share it with you. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. I'm grateful for the reminders. I need the reminders, and I seem to revisit the same truths and the same scriptures over and over. So I pray that this was refreshing for you, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Bye.